to Ms. Koutrakis. Annie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses this afternoon. My question is to Mr. Bewick. Mr. Bewick, thank you for your presentation and for highlighting the contribution made by Albertans since 2000 by way of equalization payments, and for which all Canadians are thankful for. We all know that Albertans are going through an exceptionally difficult time, and our government is working hard to find solutions and to provide the help that is required during this difficult time, not only to Albertans, but to all Canadians from coast to coast to coast. I'm curious to get your thoughts on whether you agree with the current equalization formula, which was implemented by the Harper government and in which Jason Kenney was a senior minister. And just to remind everyone, both of whom were MPs from Alberta. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that, please.
Sure. Just 2 days ago, Fairness Alberta released an analysis that had 8 ways to reform equalization. And I encourage everybody to have a look at fairnessalberta.ca. There's always economists and think tanks that often put out 1 or 2 flaws in the program. But we've, I think, put together a very comprehensive list that in 3 pages kind of gives you a really good primer on the key elements in the equalization program that are problematic for some people, including the recipient provinces. And so, no, we definitely think there's some significant reforms that could be made within the program. Some of them would benefit Alberta, actually. The first 4 would have some impact on Alberta, and the other 4 wouldn't, so long as Alberta is not a recipient province, but would still be ways to make the program more fair and generate more support for the concept that is in the Constitution across Canada.
Would you be able to, just for the interest of time, maybe just walk us over, we don't all have time to go on to the site right now. Just maybe elaborate on one.
The first problem I touched on a little bit in my comments, and it's that the health transfer and the social transfers have a $75 billion federal program that goes to provinces to cover provincial services. Because Albertans pay a higher proportion of income tax, we end up actually subsidizing that program $3 billion. Now that's $3 billion that goes from Alberta taxpayers through the federal government to then other provincial governments to cover what is a provincial jurisdiction. So there's a duplication of equalization because there's also an equalization program that's meant to redistribute funds to provinces to ensure they can provide good services. So we'd like to remove that duplication. We also think that the unchecked growth on the program, $20 billion now, and it grows with GDP regardless of how close provinces are getting. So the other big point is that despite the fact that fiscal capacity is shrinking pretty significantly over the last few years, particularly due to the energy downturn, the equalization program keeps growing. And so in theory, we could all be within 1% of each other, but the 1% that's on the lower half would get a full $20 billion. And then one last thing to think about is that it focuses on equalizing the fiscal capacity of provinces to pay for their services. But it doesn't think about what it costs to deliver those services. So we're trying to find a way to make sure everybody can deliver relatively equal services. It doesn't make any sense to ignore that it might only cost 85% as much to run a hospital or to run a service in a certain province compared to, say, Alberta or Toronto or Vancouver. So we really need to think about making sure that we reflect the cost to deliver those services.
Last question, Annie.
Sure, and this is